Well, welcome to our February Live on ServiceNow HRSD Academy session. We're going to focus today on configurable agent workspace for HR, looking at some configurations and leading practices on that will enable you to enhance your agent experience. Our safe harbor slide, we might make forward-looking statements as part of our discussion today, and we want to call that these will be under safe harbor, which means they are subject to change, so you do not make any buying decisions solely based off of those forward-looking statements. Today's webinar is part of our Live on ServiceNow event series, and the QR code on the screen is going to give you a view of all the other webinars, meetups, workshops that are conducted across product areas. So please leverage this QR code and sign up and register for the other product area events as well. And I'm going to put this link in chat for our Live on ServiceNow event series. I want to put a special call plug here for our monthly HRSD Academy sessions. We do have an article that we maintain where we list the topic as well as detailed description of what to expect in the monthly sessions. So I would really recommend that you subscribe to the page that I've pasted for the HRSD specific sessions. And based on the description, make sure anybody in your organization that needs to be part of these webinars registers for them. Our content ranges from configurational to roadmap to what's new in a given family release. So definitely leverage this article as a source for making sure the right folks are present in these webinars from your organization. Some housekeeping information. Today, we will be monitoring the Q&A panel. So as we're presenting, if you have any questions, please paste them in the Q&A panel. We will not be monitoring chat. And today's presentation is being recorded, and we will share it in our community. The slide deck also will be posted on community. So the event page where the slide deck and recording will be posted is in your chat. I pasted the link to that event page. So if you subscribe to it, you'll get notified when the recording and deck is ready. The last housekeeping rule, after this webinar, you will be prompted with a survey. And I would recommend each one of you fill out this survey. Let us know your thoughts about today's webinar, because we do actively look at that feedback and action on it. So please fill it out to let us know your thoughts. With that, I will get into the introduction of the speakers today. So I'll be one of your speakers. I'm the one on the left. I'm Amrita Nayak. I'm a principal outbound product manager here at ServiceNow with a focus on HRSD product areas. I've been part of ServiceNow for 7 years. Out of that, 2.5 have been as part of the outbound product management team. And I've worked with Agent Workspace as a focus area for a while now. So I'm really excited to be sharing our learnings from customer implementations, from community, from questions we've heard as part of content for today's webinar. And I am joined by my co-host and co-speaker today, Michael Sheridan. I'll invite him to join and introduce himself to you all.
Thanks, Amrita. So good day, everyone. My name is Mike Sheridan. I hail out of Chicago, Illinois. I'm one of the product success technical directors here in our employee workflows within our employee workflows business unit. I've been here at ServiceNow for 8 years, providing guidance and leading practices as it relates to employee workflows and now assist for HR service delivery. So thanks, Amrita.
Thank you, Mike. Before we take a look at the agenda for today, we have a poll question that we would request you all fill out. So what this poll is going to do is tell us, who are we talking to in the audience today, right? What is your experience with Agent Workspace? What is your experience with configurable Agent Workspace? How familiar are you with UI Builder? For the ones not familiar, UI Builder is the underlying technology for configurable Agent Workspace. So it's just a sense for us as speakers to know if there is any topic in today's webinar that we want to deep dive or double click into further based on whom we are interacting with. So please take a minute and fill out this poll for us, please. All right, we are a minute in and I see responses still flowing in, so I'll leave the poll open. But so far from the poll results, it looks like we have a mixed bag of audience today. We do have folks who are relatively newer to Agent Workspace, and we do have folks who are familiar with UIB as well. So this is a great balanced content today from the agenda that we've put together. So I'll move us further into the agenda in the interest of time. So for today's topics, what me and Mike have done is we've collated a list of all questions that we've seen come in from customers while implementing Agent Workspace, and also trends that we're seeing in terms of support cases or community questions. And we've picked up the top among them to share with you today in terms of basic configurations. Then we'll delve into our feature highlights of Washington and Xanadu. We won't be going in detail of each and every feature enhancement that's part of the family release, but just ones we want to highlight to you folks. And then we'll delve further into advanced configuration and then end today's session with leading practices. So we will get started with the basic configurations. We will go over creating a list category and visibility of the list. Then we'll go over how do you configure content delivery widgets. We'll talk about dashboards specific to Agent Workspace in platform analytics. This has been one of the major questions asked in community. And then we'll take a look at the landing page case, card sorting, etc. And then we'll delve into feature highlights for our family release. So let's get started. Now, lists in Agent Workspace. If you're not familiar, we have 4 main pages in Agent Workspace, right? The landing page, list page, case creation page, and our record page, which is the case form. So the list page, the third icon in Agent Workspace, brings in the list view. And in here, you have 2 types of lists, right? The one on the left in the screenshot, which is lists, is created by the admin for an audience that is beyond 1 person, right? It's not specific to one agent creating it just for themselves, but the audience is more broad. And the one on the right, which is my list over here, is the list that an HR agent creates for themselves. So while creating a personalized list as my list, an agent can click on add new list, which brings up a pop-up for them, and they can choose to create a new list from an existing list, which is present in the system, either created by the admin or themselves in the past, or they can choose to create their own list, in which case they get an option to select a table and then add in filter criteria based on the table they've selected. Once they submit that list sits in my list. Okay. And now for the more broader list, just to jog everyone's memory, right? Under this, the first module is called as the list category, and the records under it or the sub-modules are called as the list. So now let's look at how you can configure these. We have a robust guided setup for Agent Workspace for HR case management configuration, which has a section on lists, which will talk you about the tables that you have to use for creating a list category as well as the filtered list. I have called out the table where you will create the list category just for everybody's reference in these slides. But the point that I want everybody's attention on is the applicability of that list. So what we have is a concept of once we create the list, who is able to view this list, right? So for that, we create something called as an audience record, which tells us users with a specific role can be mapped to this particular list to be able to view it. So 2 aspects is 1, creating an audience, which sits in sys UX applicability table. And the second concept to that is creating that mapping between the category, the list, as well as the audience record. So that sits in sys_UX_applicability_M2M_list. So if you have worked with ServiceNow tables before, you'll know that when you add in .list at the end, it brings up that table view. But do not forget that this table name also includes list at the end. So sometimes if you forget to include that, it's not going to bring up the applicability M2M mapping table. So we need to have a mapping in this table for users to be able to view that list beyond the HR admin. So I'm going to quickly hop on to an instance to show you where you create this category as well as the applicability and the applicability mapping. So I have impersonated Barbara here, who is our HR admin. And as an HR admin, I'm going to pull up the table for the list category. And in the interest of time, I've gone ahead and already created a test list category. So this is the category I've created. And under this list category, you can see that there is another tab for UX list, which is your filtered list that you create. So this is where you will create your list category. This isn't a module that is separately present in Agent Workspace. That's why I wanted to call out these tables. And then once you've created the list, the audience field can be created in another table, which is the applicability table, right? So I have created a test audience as well. And for my audience, what I've done is I've said any user who has this role of core case reader or ER case reader is part of my audience record. And then the only part pending is to map the list and this audience record, right? Which is the third table that I had highlighted in the slide deck. I'll pull up that table and you can see the applicability column is your audience column. So for my test audience who has this role, this is the list that I want to be visible. So now as an admin, if I go to the list page, I'm able to see test category 1 and test list and access the data for that. And even as an agent, because I've added the applicability M2M mapping, an agent who has the specific roles will be able to view the category as well as the list. Okay. Now, before I go back to the slide deck to show the second most commonly asked question, which is around content delivery widgets, I wanted to quickly show you what I'm talking about, right? So this is the landing page. Right now, I am impersonating an HR admin. So there is no data here because this is specific to the agent in terms of SLA at risk cases that's assigned to that agent, high priority cases assigned to that agent. And as an admin, I don't have any cases assigned to me. So this states as 0. But at the bottom, you'll be able to see the content delivery widgets, okay, on the landing page. And if you don't see this on your instance, it's totally fine. The reason being, these widgets are part of our content delivery plugin, which comes with Employee Center Pro. So if you have installed content delivery plugin, you will be seeing these 3 widgets at the bottom. And the content for these widgets are nothing but the scheduled content that is created based out of content publishing. Okay, we'll quickly show you how the data from your scheduled content is being pulled into these widgets. So I'll go back to the slide deck to walk you through what happens on UI Builder. So these screenshots you see on the screen are specific to our UI Builder. When you go to the landing page in UI Builder, we have these API calls present under data resources, which takes in certain, which pulls in certain data for the content of, say, for example, announcements based on this particular value in the content ID field, which is announcements. In case of frequently used apps, it is frequently _used _apps. In terms of quick links, it is quick _links. Now, where this becomes important is when you go to your scheduled content, which is in your content publishing plugin, the value that's present in the content ID of the API call should match what value you have as content group. In the content group column, whatever value you have, this should match the content ID. So if you remember on the instance for announcements, the announcement was open enrollment starts today, right? Because it has a content group of value announcement, our content delivery widget for announcement is able to pull up this scheduled content and show it to an agent. Now, if you have the content group created correctly, it matches the content ID that is present in the API call, but you're still not able to see the content, the agent is still not able to see the content. There are other things to note. One is the content location. So when you create the scheduled content, if you want it to be visible in Agent Workspace, it's important that the content location matches UIB Workspace. Additionally, there are other fields in scheduled content like the audience field, which tells us who can view that scheduled content, and the start date and end date, which tells us when is that scheduled content even active, right? So these are the other areas you can look at if an agent is not able to view these content. But as long as you have the content ID mapped correctly, the API call should be able to pull that data. We have a detailed community article on this, which is tagged as resources in the slide. So when you get hold of these slide decks, you can definitely reference this. But I'm going to quickly show you this on an instance as well. Not going to go into details, but just a quick look into it, okay? So this is Barbara Hindley again as HR admin. I'm going to go into the UI builder for Agent Workspace. Once I go into the UI builder, because these widgets are present on the landing page, it's important that I open the landing page in UI builder. And once this loads, at the bottom left, you will be able to see a section, which is data and scripts. And in this section is where you will find your API calls, which is your get announcement content. It is get links content and get frequently used apps content. So this is easily missed by customers when configuring that. If there is any additional space that is present in the ID on the schedule content table or in here, then it doesn't match and the output will not be pulled. So make sure there is an exact match in this data and the data under schedule content table, which is under content publishing. This is the column, right? So there should be no additional spaces and my ID should match for it to reflect. So right now you can see that in terms of announcement, we have 2 announcements. In terms of frequently used apps, we have 6 and quick links, we have 5. The same will reflect in terms of frequently used apps. You'll see that there are 6 results that will be visible. In terms of quick links, you will see that there is 5, as well as for announcements, there are 2 announcements that's visible. So this is where you will be configuring the content delivery widgets. Now moving back to the slides. Up next is our platform analytics dashboard. So if you are working with dashboards in Agent Workspace, specifically the platform analytics piece, right? You may be running into 2 sections, right? One of them is you have certain dashboards that you've created in the core UI, which is our classic environment, and you're trying to get it migrated into platform analytics. Earlier, prior to Washington, we didn't have a mechanism to migrate, but in Washington family release, our platform team has introduced a plugin called Migration Center plugin. And what this does is it provides an admin the ability to migrate dashboards, reports, interactive filters, as well as performance analytics widgets into platform analytics, which is our new next experience, platform analytics experience. The caveat here is your migration center module will only be available if on the instance there is next experience enabled, okay? And I wanted to call migration center out because I think it's a phenomenal experience for someone looking to migrate dashboards. When you initiate migration, it actually analyzes for you the dashboard, what are the components it's going to migrate. If there are things it needs to call out, like if there are dashboards that do not have an analogous component in platform analytics, majority of them do, but if there are components like that, it will place them into a mode called compatibility mode, and there is detailed description of what you can do with data there. It gives an admin, a place to review and see, oh, if there are obsolete dashboards that I don't want to migrate and I want to delete them, an admin gets a place to do these changes and make informed decisions of what they do want to migrate into platform analytics. So I'm going to paste the resource for Migration Center in chat as well, and definitely leverage this because it is a phenomenal resource, very detailed on our product docs about Migration Center. The second category of customers that you could fall under when working with dashboards and platform analytics is you've created a custom dashboard in platform analytics, but that dashboard is not visible in Agent Workspace, right? This is a scenario which most of our customers fall under. For them, there is a dashboard visibility field when it comes to editing a dashboard in platform analytics. And it's very important for you to have a tag of HR Agent Workspace to be present in that dashboard visibility. And it's easily missed because majority of you might be looking at under settings, but it is under the information icon. So it's very important to have what workspace do you want this dashboard to be visible in. So I'm going to quickly show this to you on an instance. And I'll go back to the instance view. And as an HR admin, I'm going to go pull up platform analytics center. So we have an analytics center on main platform analytics as well as inside HR agent workspace. So the one I've pulled up, if you see on top over here, it tells you this is platform analytics center. And over here, I have a dummy reference dashboard that I've created just for today's webinar. It's going to pull in some report. And in here, when you go into edit mode, the information icon here is what pulls up the dashboard visibility. So if you do not have the HR Agent Workspace tab, you will not be able to view it under HR Agent Workspace. Now, because I have the tab, and if I go under HR Agent Workspace, I have Analytics Center as an icon under HR Agent Workspace. So you can see this is pulled under the same HR Agent Workspace. And on dashboards, I'll be able to pull in the test dashboard. So the tag is very important, okay? And the last piece in terms of basic configurations are our cards. So if I go to HR Agent Workspace, the main landing page, I'm going to quickly impersonate an agent so I can show you what's viewable by an agent on the landing page, and then show you the sections where you will configure the cards. So as Isabella Ingris, who is an agent, this is the landing page. And you can see that from her queue or from her backlog, there are 5 cases that are assigned to her, which is her total case. There is 1 high priority and there are 4 SLA at risk. So you can see this card carousel where you can see all the cards laid out. And you can see something in green here, which is called as a tag. You can see something in red here, which calls out how many hours of SLA has breached. And there's also configuration where you can sort these cards in a specific order. So now say I have 4 cases who have breached SLA, which are listed here, but I'd like to sort them either based on priority. So I want the higher priority cases to align first rather than a priority of 4, right? So you can add those additional sorts. So let me quickly show you the configuration where you could do those configurations. So I'm going to open both card list configuration and card tag configuration. Card tag configuration is the place where these labels are created, these tags are created. Oh, I am still impersonating an agent. So I'll go back to impersonating an admin to be able to configure something. So I'm just going to reload these pages. Right. So in terms of tag configuration, if you remember the SLA breached tag, this is the record which you can edit and add any kind of criteria based on what the tag should be provided on the landing page. And then to configure cards on the landing page, if I go into the SLA at risk, the record which we were talking about, you have an add sort option, which will help you add another field here from the out-of-box field. So out-of-box, we always sort Z to A in terms of SLA. But if you want to align it based on sorting based on priority or add additional sorts to that, to how your cards are displayed, you can always use the add sort button and create another criteria for sorting. So this will complete the basic configurations that I wanted to call out. So the next slide is going to talk about card sorting. We already saw this. And in the interest of time, I'll move us further into feature highlights of what we released in Washington and Xanadu. Again, note here is that I'm not going to go through the whole detailed enhancements and features that are part of these releases, only calling out those that we've come across, customers have wanted and did not know that we've released. So we wanted to call these out so you're aware that these are available to engage with, okay? So the first one is personal notes. This is a feature that we released in Washington. In the contextual panel, this is again on the record page, which is the case form. There is an icon for personal notes. And what this is a scratchpad-like experience for HR agents to take quick notes, right? These are notes that are not confirmed yet, or notes that the agent doesn't want to be made part of the case. So they're not using comments or work notes, but rather these are notes that they want to keep track of for their personal use, but not ready to make part of the case. So this is where they can add this personal notes section. And anything that they add in this personal notes is only viewable by them. So say tomorrow the case gets transferred to another agent, the new HR agent cannot view these personal notes. It's only readable for the old agent who created it. And once the case is closed, this personal notes gets deleted from the system. In Xanadu release, what we did is we added attachments to this personal notes section. And this attachment that you add here follows the same rules as what personal notes is. It's only readable or viewable by the agent who uploaded the attachment and gets deleted from the system when the case is closed. So this is definitely something that ER agents will resonate with, because as part of their investigation on an ER case, they may come across information that they're not ready to make part of the case because everything is audited, right? It's information that they're still making sure they get a confirmation on to start adding to the case. So you can make those notes over here. Next one is the case creation and landing page improvement. So we had customers who have similar HR services run into scenarios where, while creating the HR case, they ended up selecting the wrong HR service because they were very similar with another HR service that they had configured as part of the system. What this led to at a later point was transferring of cases between the services. Now, to avoid this, what we did out of box in Xanadu is we introduced the HR service description field in the case creation module itself. And what this helps with customers who have similar HR services, they can leverage the description field to have detailed description of when an HR service should be used. So the agent, while creating this HR case, is ensured to pick the right HR service. So this will avoid transfer of cases at a later point. The screenshot on the right is our landing page improvement. This is again as of Xanadu. What we've done here is on our landing page for an agent in the overview tab, we only show those cards or those widgets or those data which is specific to the agent. And we've created another tab called My Team tab, which brings in data specific to that agent's team. And what this in turn did was improve the experience of the agent, because now they're just focused on their day and how their day looks like. So they get their their workloads view, and they get the data of their team by just one click on the same landing page. This in turn also improves performance by a lot. So if you have customized your landing page to include more data pointers, definitely think of this idea of making tabs, because they help with loading this data only when needed and not loading the whole data on the overview page. So this is as of Xanadu. The next one as of Xanadu is we had an ask for having a one-click view of any case or task that has been updated by anybody other than an agent, right? So today, majority of the time an agent spends is on the case form because they are already working on investigating in a case. They don't have an easy way to see which are the cases that has gotten an update. And that's not an update by me as an agent, right? So we added a sub-module in HR cases as well as HR task called recently updated. And this will bring up a list of all the cases and tasks that has been updated by anybody other than the agent. This is an easy way to see what's actionable on your end. Lastly, from the Xanadu release, I want to call out an update to at a glance configurations on the configuration settings page. Just to give some context around it, anytime an HR case is created, if there is an open for a person in that HR case, on the right-hand side in the contextual panel, the first icon is at a glance, wherein you get more information about who the open for person is there. It could be their location, their department, their start date, what are the previously open cases for them, and so on, right? In terms of configuration for these, we didn't have an ability to walk into additional fields from the fields that are on the case form. And starting Xanadu onwards, we've introduced the ability to do walk into a reference field from the case fields that are on the form. So in the screenshot above, it might be a little smaller to view, but what we are showing here is the ability to walk into the manager of somebody who is the open for. So if you're able to see the second screenshot, The case here is open for able tutor, but on the at a glance panel, you're able to see able tutor's manager's information. So this is something that the admin can configure based on how their organization uses agent workspace. Specifically useful if it's a deskless worker scenario, right? Where there is a struggle of being able to get in touch with the employee because they're either in the manufacturing plant or they're driving or they're not on their laptops being able to engage with the agent right away. In these scenarios, a common flow is that the agent reaches out to the employee's manager and ensures that the employee is getting the service. So these are scenarios in which you can definitely leverage the dot walking to reference fields. Next one is something we've introduced in Washington. It's our configuration settings page. And Mike is going to go in detail and give us a walkthrough of it, but I'm just going to share that this is part of our continual improvement, right? Once the admin has configured agent workspace via guided setup, these are list of configurations which are commonly used by the admin to make changes. So we don't want them to go back to the guided setup and look for where do I make the changes. So it is our feature where we provide a one-stop experience where common configurations are listed. So now to walk us and talk to us more about the configuration settings page, I'll hand off to Mike to take us further.
Thank you, Amrita. All right, so let's get the share going. All right. So what I want to do is ultimately I'll walk through each of these items within the application itself, so you could see what each of these are doing. But we have different components to allow you to configure these a little bit better, rather than going into UI Builder for HR case management in order to make these configuration changes. So the different sections are the records, and we'll go through each of these, what the minimum input for ad hoc approval search is. So basically this is how many characters, alphanumeric, are we requiring before it actually conducts the search. So just for performance reasons, if we're searching it 2, it's a type ahead, it's going to start conducting the search. The case tab title field, this is how it's visual in the HR agent workspace. So if we, for the case tab title field, if we're using the case number, we're going to see the case number. We could use open for, so there's different ways that we can configure that based on what kind of table it is. And another item I'll show. The playbook card configuration. So we have a card configuration based on if you've had the legacy workspace in regards to the UI Builder configurable workspace. We'll talk about the manager email template ID. So when with the manager email, what template are we going to use? Just a simple configuration. At a glance, the cases limit. So do we want to show 2? Do we want to show 4? Do we want to show 14? So this is just limiting how many cases we're showing in the at a glance panel. The manager fields for popover. So this is going to show additional information specific for the manager. So as an agent, I may need to reach out to the manager. I need to know what department they're in. These are items that we can configure to show additionally. The user field. So there are times to where the user could be different, or at least the user information we want to see can be different based on the case type. A good example is in ER cases, we really no longer have the concept of a subject person. We have involved parties. So I don't want to show the subject person because ultimately it may not even be populated typically. So I would show the open for, where on a normal case, maybe it's a payroll discrepancy. I want to see the subject person. So we'll show what that looks like. The agent assist configuration. So we can configure agent assist per table. So this is just dictating what tables are are calling to what agent assist configuration, ultimately what information they're searching. Response templates, so what response templates are available for what tables, kind of goes along with the list as well, the list configuration ID. So in the questions that we had earlier, we had some questions about lists. So the list configuration ID is what list configuration are we using for Agent Workspace? Maybe we have a custom list that we want to call out. Well, we could easily navigate through that through the configuration setting page. The highlighted value configuration ID. So this is when we highlight values in Agent Workspace. I'll show an example where I'm highlighting the number when a case has been updated recently. Those are part of our highlighted value configuration ID. So if we have multiple, we can dictate which one is being used for Agent Workspace. Case creation employee fields, a very common one. So when I'm creating a case, I want to be able to see additional data points. How can we configure for that? And then last but not least, the landing page, the HR case configuration. So the dashboards, the high priority, recently updated cases, and HR cases SLA at risk. We can just call, update text, change the criteria. So we have a lot of things that we can do. Again, at the end of the PowerPoint, I'll go into the application to show you what that looks like. Okay, for advanced configuration, so how to disable the visibility of a component, another question that's come up in this webinar. Recently updated case, how can we change how that appears in the list? So we have a recently updated list that we could pan to, but there's times to where I have a working list of all the cases assigned to me where I just want to see if somebody's updated something without having to toggle between lists. So although we do provide that out of box, it's a different way in order to see updates that we've had some feedback from partners and customers that it would be nice. So we'll show you how to configure that. The case creation, page configuration, and customization. So we have the ability to configure what would look like a customization. Like when I have a payroll discrepancy, I could pull in, direct deposit account number, or if I have a tuition reimbursement, I could pull in what that looks like. So we'll go more into details as I go through the slides of each of these. And then lastly, the document templates within Workspace. So the tab sidebar visibility. So a lot of times we want to hide the sidebar icons based on, things like, well, what table is it in? So in this use case, I'm showing that I have an ER case where I'm hiding the response templates if it's an ER case. For all other cases, it's going to show, but not for ER cases because I've used the data.record.table data resource in order to hide that element. So this is just one example. If it was another component, a ribbon, we have the ability to hide other objects by default or conditionally. So we'll show an example where I've hidden the response templates, and you can see what it looks like in UI Builder. A recently updated case highlighted. So what I'll show here is just how I configured for the number to be highlighted in teal when it's been updated in the last 10 minutes. So in my working interface, I'm working in payroll cases. I don't want to have to toggle back and forth in order to see, what's been updated. Hey, somebody else updated it. I get to see it in real time. And I'm just showing the example of the highlighted configuration that I have based on the number field. One thing to mention here is that typically you see the number field as the first column. I cannot highlight the first column, specifically the number field, when it's the first column, because the first column is typically the link to the record. So in this example, I just moved the number over to the right. I could have kept the number to the left and highlighted the short description. So any way of highlighting, I highlighted the number, you can highlight the state, priority, whatever the case may be, based on your use case. the case creation page configuration. So on the left-hand side, you see where I have a specific tuition reimbursement HR service, and it's pulling on by configuration additional fields that I would need to create the case. This isn't always the case, no pun intended, when we talk about customizing the case creation. We see a lot of customers have things like a subservice below the HR service that they've customized the case creation in order to give that ability for a selection of the subservice. So there's different ways you can customize. We'll talk about those leading practices, always copying the out-of-box variant or any other of the read-only components, maybe UI client scripts or maybe data brokers, whatever the case may be. There's going to be times to where you're looking to customize and the object is read only, the recommendation, and really the mandate now is to copy those objects. And document templates in HR agent workspace. So as it exists today, we only support HTML document template types within the workspace. It's something we're looking at. Target dates, I'm not certain on, but long story short is that it's a functionality we're looking at to support both HTML as well as PDF type document templates in the workspace. So a lot in the community, there's been a lot of questions around, hey, I can't see my PDF in the configurable agent workspace. And that's because it was a PDF, not a document template type of HTML. And moving on to more of the leading practices. So in the poll that we took, I noticed that there's some customers or some people on the webinar that are using App Repository Studio in order for migration of objects. Others, I would assume, are using update sets. We'll give some important details, and I stress important details around those. And then we'll talk about custom variants and what the order matters. So in a nutshell, we just have a maturity scale of migrating workspace objects. Typically, it's the update set. As we're going into walk, run, and sprint, we're using Git branch. We're using where we just have one app version. We're using Git branch to where we have multiple branches where we could do some level of diligence of what is updating what. The problem and the greatest takeaway you can take from this slide is that you cannot commingle using update sets and using Studio, i.e. the app repository. You're going to have issues where metadata is going to be missed. If you're using update sets, continue to use update sets. If you're using the app repository, continue to use the app repository. You cannot commingle them without causing issues. There are ways to back out, but it's not just a simple click. But going forward, if you've commingled them already, I would recommend to submit a support case stating so support could get you back to a state where you won't see issues in the future. For those that it started with update sets, continue to use update sets. Those that are using the app repository, continue. But again, I underscore, do not commingle update sets with the app repository in migrating any of your objects. And custom variants. So we do have customers that unfortunately are on older versions of the applications or even the family, and they may see some of the out-of-box variants or maybe even the case SRP. I can't remember the case SRP or the create case was at a order of 0. The way that it works when I create a custom variant, the lower the order is the one that's going to be used if it meets all the audience and if it meets the audience of the variant. So the thing to know is that the lowest the order is going to be the one that's being used. And somebody on the call may say, well, our case SRP out of the box shows a value of 0. How can we be less than 0? In those cases, you still are dealing with the read-only object. Then you would just make it a negative number. So what I typically do is put it at -10 when the out of the box was at 0. We've accommodated that in the product. So I believe now it defaults to 50 for the out of box objects. So you have some wiggle room to create your custom variants in a lower order to have those, the ones that are used. So what I'm going to do now at this time is I'm going to walk through the items that I covered in the slides, and I'm going to kind of go pretty fast here due to timing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start in my HR agent workspace. And I'm going to start by going to my page configuration. For those that do not see this little gearbox, it's one of two things. One, you aren't at the more recent version of the agent workspace, the agent workspace for HR case management, or you do not have permissions. So what I'm going to do is walk quickly through each of these items and what they mean. So for the record, the minimum input again is what is going to be the minimum input that I need to do in order to create an approval for one of my cases. So the example is when I'm the assignee, I have the ability to add an ad hoc approval within Workspace. And it's just how many characters are going to be required before it actually conducts the search. Mine is at 3. So you can see once I type in 3 characters, it starts doing the search. Pretty simple. I'm showing the timeline for employee relations. In this instance, I have it toggled off. But this is what it's showing. This is if I toggle it on and open an ER case, it's going to show this case timeline. I have the ability to minimize it, but making that available at all is based on this setting here, toggling it on or off. I'm moving to the contextual side panel, the at a glance. We have our cases limit, and here I'm just limiting my cases to 4. If I open one of my cases, you can see I have 1, 2, 3, 4 cards, just to show I'm not, no smoking mirrors here, no demo magic. And then the manager fields for popover. So I have the position, department, and the email. So in this, I could click on Titus Rodriguez, who is the manager, and you can see the position, department, and email. If you don't see this manager, the user doesn't have a manager. So there's a theme in Workspace that if I don't have any data there, it's not going to show the card or the field. We'll see the same with employee information. If there's no manager specified, you will not see this manager link here. So don't be surprised if you open a case and you don't have a manager link. Just check the profile and make sure that they have a manager specified. I mentioned earlier about the user field. So we have the ability to say, well, for a certain type of case, I want to use the user as the subject person would be the user. The example I gave earlier was an ER case, we have the open for. So this is up for configuration based on your use case. I don't see a lot of customers making any changes here, but again, we make it configurable based on what you're trying to accomplish. For Agent Assist, these are contextual search tables that I have a configuration for. So as you can see here, the case operations has a different sys-ID than the core case. So I can have different Agent Assist configurations based on the table. This requires the ability to go to the contextual search or table contextual search configuration to see which one is available, and we just call it out here. And here I'm just going to the contextual search table, and any of those sys-IDs that I was showing earlier are just called out here. So all of those sys-IDs are what you saw on the page earlier. Response templates. So response templates configuration, again, the same. I'm calling to which response templates are available to what tables. And then again, I could go to the table configuration for response templates in order to configure those and then call them out here to which ones we're using for what table. The case table field, I mentioned that, as you can see, all of my cases here have the number. Well, you can configure it to, maybe you want to show, the short description. Maybe you want to show the subject person. So this is up for configuration based on your use case. Playbook card configuration, by default, it's off, which off means that it's using the SNHR WS card config table. And this is all dependent on what workspace applications you have on your instance. If you are a legacy workspace customer, and then you're now going to UIB, if you wanted to change things, you just toggle them on or off. True, you're using the UI Builder SNLE playbook card configuration. So this is another, I don't see a lot of customers modifying, but again, something we put in your hands is the configuration. Manager email template ID. So this is the email template that's going to be used for the manager. If you look in the email client templates, you'll find the sysID. So in lieu of time, I'm not going to toggle to that table, but this is where that value is stored in the client email template configuration. Getting back to lists, and let me expand here. Getting back to list, the list configuration ID, this is the sysID of the configuration we're using for workspace for all of our lists. So there may be a case to where you want to change the list because you want to make it more custom rather than using the out of the box. And when I say custom, I don't mean a preference list. I mean, holistically, these are a total separate set of lists that we're using, and we're keeping the out of the box as it is. That's the sysID. We have the same for the highlighted value configuration ID, to which I'll go through. It was part of what I wanted to show, what you could do for your list in order to show any updates. So I'm just going to go to a list of mine, and I'm going to open this payroll discrepancy, this 2250, and I'm going to change the priority to low, and I'm going to save that record. If I toggle back to my lists, for my payroll, when I go to the ones assigned to me, it's going to toggle that in green in order to show that it's been updated. Well, actually in teal, sorry. More of a fuchsia. So you can see the 2250 is the one I just updated, and I have my query to where anything that's been updated in 10 minutes. So I didn't have my personal list configured, basically because I moved the number to the second column, but just goes to show you that when the case number is in the first column, it's not going to highlight it, or whatever highlighted field you have, if it's in the first column, it's not going to be highlighted. And all I did to configure that was went to my highlighted values, and I did that for my payroll case. And you can see the number. I just have it, my query, where it's been updated 10 minutes ago. And then I just have it to where I set a color, and I set the color, and we have some other things where we could change the label, hide the label, but for all intents and purposes, I just want to show that it's been updated. So getting back to our configurations, that's what the highlighted configuration ID is. The case creation employee fields. So this is where we could add to the list, but it's got to be I call it the system name. So personal email may appear different on the form. We got to use the system name with a comma separated value. So it may be, fields that you want to add. And when I go to create a new case, and I choose my user, it's going to be the fields that appear here. And you're probably going to ask, hey, Mike, you had like 15 different values on that list. Why is it only showing email and personal email? Because those other fields do not have any values. And we're not going to show a field here if it doesn't have a value. So that's an important thing to note when we're talking about the case creation or specifically for employee information. And then lastly, we have the landing page, the HR case card configurations. And here I have the ability, I'm not going to open all three of them. I just want to open one. You can see where I may want to change the condition. I don't want it assigned to me. And now that it's not ones that are assigned to me, I'm going to want to change the text. If text is empty, we have configurable text that we could change. So these are the things that we're offering with the page configuration in order to keep it more configuration driven rather than a customization. So while we're here, I'm going to open UI Builder, and we're going to show how I hid a separate component. So I'm going to go to HR, the UI Builder for HR case management, and I'm going to open my copied variant for the case SRP. And we're talking about looking at a record. This is going to be your case SRP. And again, I followed best practices. I copied the variant. For this particular item, I showed in the slide that I wanted to hide one of the side panel items, and those are considered the tab sidebar. And what I did is I just went to response templates after I edit my original scope. And I went to the configuration, and you can see where I just constructed a condition to where it's going to hide this element or this side panel item when my table is an ER case. And we could build them by using the editor where I can bind data to hide this tab. So pretty simple. It would work the same if I wanted to hide a different container depending on your use case. But you'll see I have hide conditions for a lot of these containers. And it's just more of, well, what am I trying to hide? I wouldn't hide the form, but it may be a ribbon. And we already have out of the box conditions that are hiding them. It may be something you want to customize because, you know, the ribbon is something we want to hide. So getting to the end, the last thing I'll talk about is the case configuration. And I'll just show an example here. When I go to create a new case, and I mentioned that I could use fields to pull in by way of a case creation configuration. And in this subservice, I have it configured as a reference to what I have available in the HR service. On a form, it would work, but in Workspace, this is a different interface. It doesn't work the same. So when I click the drop down, it's not looking at the payroll discrepancy. So what I have to do then is that with the UI Builder is I have to either create, if it's an object that's read only, I have to create an object, and that may be a data broker, that may be a UX client script in order to attain the values that I need based on, you know, the details of my customization. So my goal here wasn't to walk you through how you customize to do that. We really don't have enough time. Is to show you that it's going to take some level of customization, even depending on your use case, even though we offer configurations around this. There are things you could do with a subservice when you use the choice dependency, different configurations, but this was a simple one to illustrate why while I had the chance. So given the time, I'm going to get back to the PowerPoint, and what I want to do here is talk about the resources slide. So we have a blog on community. We have YouTube channel that has a ton of Workspace and ServiceNow collateral altogether. We do have now learning UI Builder fundamentals because it's going to take some knowledge in UI Builder in order to work with some of these work with all of the workflow objects within UI Builder. We have a deep dive for the February store and Washington, D.C. releases, so you can understand more of the functionality, as well as a link to the Xanadu deep dive for HR service delivery for case and knowledge management. So I know we are about a minute or two over, but I thank you for sticking around, and thank you for joining this webinar.